Security Council of India. I welcome you all for joining this session. So today our topic of panel discussion is DevSecOps, what is in for reality, covering intervention, process, storyboards, recording tools and responsibilities. So I would like to request the panelists to come onto the stage as I call out the names. So Commander Sanjeev Singh, Chief Information Security and Data Protection Officer from Birlasoft. Mr. Sridhar Sharma, Manager, IT Infra and Security, Marico Limited. Mr. Bhupesh Kumar Gupta, Director, Cyber Security from Target. And Mr. Gagandeep Singh Nanda from Regional Director, Government for Zscaler. So Commander Sanjeev Singh would be chairing this session, so he would be the moderator for this. And the floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Typically, in any event, this session, the one immediately after lunch, and the last session, they're the most difficult, right? Energy levels are pretty down or in full of josh. But I have an exciting panel for you here. Is it better now? All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session. Today, we are going to explore DevSecOps or SecDevOps or shift left security, as many of you know it by. Now, traditionally, we have been following DevOps Sec, right, where developers would develop a piece of code, they put it in production, and then throw it to those security guys who will probably come and do annual VAPT and take care of all the security of the code, right? That model kind of worked, didn't work, but as attackers started realizing the importance or the ease of getting into environments through application, and we are all aware of the big time attacks. Most of them come through vulnerabilities in applications, many of them publicly available. But the crazy thing is, for every in-house application which has not gone through a rigorous security testing process, everything is a 0 day. There is no structured product management there. And so an attacker which is able to get hold of a vulnerability in an in-house application, um, they have hit the gold mine. And so as organizations started realizing this, some things have started to improve. They started bringing security, say, between the development and then going live in production. So it became DevSecOps. And now a little bit also what we'll explore today is also a topic of SecDevOps. Right? So you use them interchangeably, but the idea was security started shifting left slowly but surely, and we'll explore some of those things during the panel discussion. And one of the biggest challenges there is security and developers. They were always like two brothers lost in Kumbh Mela trying to get together, kind of like what we have. So not a crowd, right? And so it's how they come together. That's like a very nice story, like a good Hindi movie. And so we'll explore that over the next 40-45 minutes. I have a fantastic panel with me, starting with Sridhar. Sridhar manages the IT, infra, and security for Marico, one of the largest FMCG companies in India. And he has been instrumental in introducing shift left security through a very agile application security framework in his experience. Then we have Bhupesh. He heads the cyber defense and product security in India for Target, whom you all know is a huge retail chain in the West. He has, again, a very extensive experience in cybersecurity. Then we have Gagan. Gagan is regional director with Zscaler. He has over 1.5 decades of experience in this field. Currently, he is heading the entire government vertical for Zscaler Pan India. So as you see, we have multi-decades of experience in this field. I myself am CISO and DPO at Birlasoft. We are an ITS company. Together, this panel brings in a lot of experience. And to start off with the background I gave you, I would like to explore with the panel that traditionally, like I said, the application has been very left. The security has been left as part of application development process. But slowly we have been moving left, right, from right to left. So, what is your understanding? And let me start with you, Pej. What is your understanding of this Sec DevOps or DevSecOps? How is it structurally different from what we used to do in the traditional legacy application development models?
Yeah. Thank you, Sanjeev, for the nice introduction, first of all. So, DevSecOps, if we go by the definition of it, right, it's about integrating security into agile and DevOps best practices. If somebody is in the journey of moving from traditional development model to DevOps model, you are basically fixing the problem of the gap between the operation and development team. So you build a pipeline. Now that helps you deliver software reliably, right, and faster, but not securely. So there is a need to integrate security in this pipeline. And when you integrate security in that pipeline, it becomes DevSecOps. So two different things. One is the transformation from traditional development model to DevOps, and then integrating security to make it DevSecOps, right? Now, another important point is that on a bigger idea, why it is needed, because we want to change the mindset for developers, for security team, for everybody, which is called security mindset. So from a mindset of security as an afterthought process to a security is everybody's responsibility, or it's a collective responsibility. That's a bigger goal. So everybody in the organization, whether it's operation person, it's a developer, or it's a security, everybody has a responsibility to make sure that organization is secure from all the attacks that is happening. One last point that I want to make here is, if you are in that journey and if you look at agile guidelines, right, or you look at DevSecOps guidelines, there is a lot of similarities between. So if you look at agile, just one example, if agile talks about more collaboration than contract negotiation, the DevSecOps also talks about more collaboration rather than just checking marks some security. So it's all about taking that input and then working towards and making it easier for developer and for a security professional.
Great. I think you hit the nail on the head with collaboration. So, Sridhar, any thoughts on that?
Sure. So first of all, thanks a lot, Sanjeev, for the brief introduction describing about my role, and thanks a lot for audience here. So in the next 40 minutes, we will be sharing about DevSecOps. So while we say DevSecOps, right? So before moving to DevSecOps, let's understand what DevOps is, right? So because DevOps sets the foundation for DevSecOps. So in 2009, that DevOps was coined by Peter Dobiel, right? And in one of the DevOps days conference, and since then we have seen transformation happening in application development space in terms of DevOps. And what is DevOps basically? So traditionally it has been the waterfall model, wherein the developer will understand the requirement, then he'll build the requirement and deliver it, and post that it's the operations job to take care of it, right, and support it. Now, that's the traditional environment, and it has been going on since, I'll say, decades that way. And then came Agile, which transformed the development part of it. But what about operation? Operation side was still the same. Nothing changed over there. And it was always a wall between developers and operations guys, and it was like uh, we normally in development as well we say that it's a developer versus tester, right? So the developer versus operation was a bigger fight, right? So you are getting a code which you have to maintain, and then developer says now it's yours to maintain. Now I have released it, and now I'm working on something different, right? So that's how it has been. Now, with the DevOps, the thing came in the picture was the collaboration between the two different divisions of an organization, like development and operations team. Right? And we started working as a single team in a collaborative manner with the faster and stable releases of the application as an end goal. And the customer delight was one of the main objectives from where it originated, right? So understanding the end objective, right? It's about the customer delight, right? And the resiliency that we have to build in. Now, then there comes the picture of security, right? Security traditionally was an operations task again, right? Now we started talking about shift left. It's been a decade now. We started talking about shift left, and as part of shift left, we incorporated different, I'll say, checkpoints into the development life cycle. We started with the secure development life cycle, like secure SDLC process. Now, DevSecOps is I'll say that it's a extension of that in the agile way of working, wherein you have a DevOps pipeline, and in DevOps pipeline you build in your or you will say you integrate security at different checkpoints, right? And what it essentially does, right? So essentially it brings down the mean time to resolve a vulnerability, right? So what used to take years, year because I know I work in an enterprise environment. Any vulnerability which is discovered, right, in a code on an enterprise application, it might take more than 3 to 6 months to resolve that, right? So in order to reduce that gap, we came up with the concept of DevSecOps, and then we started building in a pipeline concept. So that's my take on DevSecOps.
Thanks. And it was nice. You talked about you need to do DevOps before you could do DevSecOps, right? And DevOps practically means you're going more modular in your application development. Instead of building the entire building in one shot, you bring in modular pieces and build. So smaller code snippets, but more faster push into the repository. What do you think, Varun?
Thank you so much. The team has put DevSecOps in a very beautiful way. One important point, and thank you so much for addressing first what is DevOps, because that is required to understand before we move towards DevSecOps. See, anything which comes in market, there has to be a need for it, right? Then only there has to be a demand for it. Then only supply comes. So, what was the need, demand to have this DevSecOps? Coding has become a very multi-dimensional. When I was in college, maybe 2 decades back or 2.5 decades back, there used to be a emulator, simulator. You do the coding and you just run the code and you give it to someone. Now the coding has become multi-dimensional. When I say in the senses, a coder is also doing coding using infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. Microservices are there. APIs are there. It's not only about just libraries. A person who is doing the coding, developer, he is doing coding something. He has bought EC2 instance on the AWS, right? He has bought some services on the Azure. APIs are talking to each other. Now, do we think that developer has got the knowledge of when he's developing, he is by mistake opening some service or opening some token, or maybe it should be least privilege, but he has given more privilege than required. And instead of one, suppose S3 bucket should be private, he by chance left it public, right? That is how leaks, tokens are stolen, that is how attacks are happening. That is the need today, that the onus which was on the security team should be shifted towards developer. When developer is developing something, he has to take the onus of security. That is the need, because his single small mistake can lead to a very big cyber attack. You can't wait till the version is completed, then the security team will do the testing, because it's so complex now. That will delay the process. And maybe by the team, security team will come back to that guy, 3-4 versions is already released by the developer, and he is doing the same mistake again and again. Why he has to do the same mistake again and again? Before releasing 5, 6 versions, he should know what he is doing and what are the mistakes he is doing then and there, so that he can rectify those mistakes. That is the demand which has created DevSecOps. That while my steam panelists are saying shift left is nothing but proactively testing something with respect to security before you are delivering. That is what DevSecOps is all about.
Great. And I think you brought in a very nice point, which is it's not just the code or the application layer anymore. Where the application is going to run from, in which form, whether it is a traditional NTR approach, microservices, cloud-based PaaS, or nowadays API thing. Over the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of supply chain attacks, right? A developer may be developing a piece of code, and that may be the biggest or the best secure, most secure code in the world. Yet there are so many interfaces now, so many leverages. You're taking libraries developed by someone else, using in your piece of code. How do you ensure that that part is also secure? So that awareness of what else my piece of code is talking to, what impact it can have on what I'm doing, or what it can impact it will have on the outcome functionality of the piece of code I'm developing. It's critical, very nicely brought out. So with that, let me start with you, Gagan, again. What do you think are most of the common challenges? We all agree it's good, nice to have, yet this is an area which exists in our thought processes, a lot of people want to do. It's not very, very easy to achieve. So what are the challenges in achieving DevSecOps?
See, the biggest challenge, there are a couple of them. First is the mind shift. Everyone says this is not my cup of tea, this is not my KRA. Developers will say. But more than that, the challenge is how the developer can know what to test, what is the security. Because a developer who is maybe good in some coding, he is not good in security. That is not his KRA. That is not his learning process in the journey of his career. So dearth of automation, dearth of right resources given to the development, one thing. Second thing is organizations should adopt tools, mechanism, processes, ecosystem so that it facilitates the developer to achieve that goal. Because a developer, suppose take an example, he's writing a code and entering the code in GitHub, right? It's a resource code repository. Tell me something, how he knows that, how to test that code with respect to security. He doesn't know. There has to be a mechanism which is integrated with all these processes, code integration, code delivery, repositories, when he's putting the code in VSS, anything. So that code gets streamlined through the security process, and he comes to know if I have left anything open, which I should have not, if I have given public access to some repository, which I should have given private, if I am going beyond the boundary of compliances, if I have left some EC2 instances, take an example, I'm taking an example, open after the code has been run, these all things, there have to be a mechanism to tell the developer so that he can rectify. A developer will not know himself. That is where the challenge is. First is mindset. Second is, having the right ecosystem with the organizations, with the development team. They are working in sync. And the third is obviously that there has to be a tools integrated with this mechanism. Otherwise, again, it will be on the paper DevSecOps, but actually development team, security team, application team, infrastructure team, operations team who is delivery, they all will be working in silos. So the biggest thing is mindset and right tools, right automation, right AI ML engines, developers should be provided by the organizations.
Great. I think the focus on developer is important because no developer wants to do bad codes, right? It's probably the circumstances, lack of awareness. What do you think, Rupesh?
So Gagan covered it really well when we talked about the mind shift, exactly. So making it easier for security teams and for developer teams, that's a mind shift, right? Everybody understands security. Now, there is one point that I want to cover in my experience. that once you are in that journey of implementation of DevSecOps, there are two major challenges. Gagan talked about tooling specifically. What tool needs to be integrated? Now, as a security professional or as a cybersecurity leader, when you need to strategize your product security, you have like lot of tools to implement. Now, the first challenge is what works for my organization. That's first thing. And even after that implementation of various tools in the pipeline, there is an output from every tool. And that output needs to be consumed by the developer. Now, the challenge is that are you going to send several outputs, or you are going to make one output and send it to the developer and say, this is the health of your application. This is the priority list that you need to fix, rather them going through like dozens of information just to figure out what is my action item. And that confuses the developer. So as being a business enabler, security is a business enabler, right? So I need to enable developer to write secure code, and I need to build tools so life becomes easier for them. So when they look at one interface and say that, okay, this is the health of my application, this is the priority list, I fix that, and my health of my application will be okay. So I think these are few things which needs to be built and integrated so we can make it easier for everybody.
Great. And Sridhar, you talked about your experience of implementing it. So you have some insights for us?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, I'll say that Gagan and Bhupesh have really covered the crux of it. It's the mindset shift and automation, right? So both are really essential. And one of the major aspects when it comes to mindset change, or I'll say anything which is new, right, in any organization requires a change management process, right? There has to be sponsorship from the management, right? So that's the first and the foremost thing. But at the same time, there has to be positive culture. You cannot drive security only basis on fear or basis on compliance or with the strict. You need a positive approach when you're talking to developers and the teams, right? So when you go to and talk to product teams, so I am sharing my experience, right? So we created a culture of security champions across the development team, right? So essentially security folks you would find 1 in 100, right, in an organization. And how much you can think that he'll be able to cover in terms of security operations, security risk management, and enabling developers, right? Checking their security risk reports of different tools. So you cannot do each and everything, right? So you need that support system, and these security champions are the support system that kind of drive security within their teams in development, right? So that's something that we did in my previous organization, and we had multiple rounds of discussion, not a single round. You cannot drive it in one single discussion and say that that's it, guys, and that it is completed. So a multiple round of discussion, and each and every time the biggest question was what is there in it for me, right? Why do I do it? How it will help me, right? And it's pretty logical. Until unless you give them something about what how it benefits a developer, you will never be able to success, right? So DevSecOps will always fail because developer will think that security is not his job, or it's not his KRA or KPI, right? So different metrics will be there, but then uh, that security champion approach is really required. And at the same time, uh, you need to have the templates and standards in place, right? So for a organization, let's say you have a .NET development pipeline, you can have standard library, secure libraries that you can always share with the development team in advance, right? So if the code is to be developed, you can have a secure libraries, and at the same time modular approach, or the way we call it microservices, right? That's something that can be reused instead of creating that code again and again for each application, right? So the certain libraries can be reused in the standard enterprise applications. So that's another aspects of when we talk about Mindshift change. Right? Now talking about automation, automation is pretty important, and when we talk about DevSecOps, uh, I'll go again. I have to go back to the DevOps and cover that, because automation comes from originates from DevOps itself, and security is just a you can say add-on or additional integration to it, right? So until unless you have automated few of the stuff, and you still say that okay, your code is developed, and then you send it to a tester, and then he'll test it, and then give you a result, and post that, if you think that's how you'll be able to serve your customer in a better way, no, that's not going to happen. So automation is really important, and at the same time, it's not just about uh, the tests being automated, but the results have to come on board as a whatever the ticketing platform you have, like Jira or any other platform, right? And you get those tickets as additional work items, or you can say your backlog items in agile way of working, right? And then developers can work on that.
Great, thanks. And I especially liked how positively all three of you did not only talk about challenges, but also about what you can do to probably reduce those challenges or mitigate them. Some of the themes that came out very, very strongly. One was this mindset or mind shift among developers. This is about collaboration between security and developers. Other was about awareness, and very rightfully so. They can't do security if they're not aware of the impact of what they do. Lack of automation came about very, very strongly. Lack of toll gates, which is again comes to automation. And automation, while it is easy to say, probably the most difficult thing to implement. Because if you don't go back and look at your processes, re-engineer them, make it repetitive and I'd say structural, it's not easy to automate, because then the automation itself becomes a problem. Just try to automate whatever is existing today. Right? And yet, even with all those challenges, there are a lot of good success stories. Netflix, for one, Amazon. Uh, Netflix is a new age, I would say, company. They are on DevSecOps from day one. They push codes thousands of time a day nowadays. They've gone so modular, and maybe we'll explore that. But the advantage of implementing is uh, much resilient, much better codes. Also, somewhere I read that the cost of mitigating a security vulnerability in a code rises exponentially as you do it much later in this entire life cycle of the code. Right? The earlier you detect and stop, it's cheaper. So it also makes business case to do Dev, DevSecOps, not only as a security improvement, but also as an overall total cost of ownership for that piece of code. So while we looked at challenges, let me now explore of how can we overcome these challenges? What can we do with our developers, with our processes, to maybe have a success story within our own organization? And let me start with you, Rupesh.
So yeah, one thing Sanjeev, Sridhar talked about creating security champions, right? I think in our organization we have a similar program called Security Ninjas. Now, what is the problem statement here is that uh, security professionals sometimes doesn't know how to code. Sometimes developers and most of the time developers doesn't know what is security. So there is a skill gap, 100%. Now, what we have done is, in the Ninja program, we went to the developer community, we said, okay, who are those right people who are security enthusiasts, who like security, who wants to do cybersecurity? We selected those people and we made a Ninja community. Now this Ninja community is coming from the developers. So whenever there is a challenges that is being discussed at developer side, they know it and they can recommend uh, uh, solution that can fix security issues because they are collaborating security too. So that program has been really helpful. Then this is how you actually, one of the solution, how do you create skill set within the organization between security and developers to find those people embed into the developers' teams and just collaborate and find a solution to the problem that you want to solve. So this is one thing that I really want to talk about. The other thing that I specifically told that what one platform for the developers, right, where they can go and look for information, what they want to fix. If you give that platform to a developer, they will be mostly interested in knowing, okay, is the health of my application improving or not? So one score to the application which measures the security, it's an amazing thing. If you give, okay, this is the score your application, if you doesn't meet that score, then your application is not healthy. And if you meet this score, your application is healthy. You can do even more, right, to make it healthier. And these are the things that you need to do. So you are much more integrated organically and culturally also. So everybody is interested in moving towards the security mindset.
Great. I like how you focus on positive influence. Gagan, I know you guys are in cloud space and a lot of applications are moving to cloud, not only lift and shift, but also being developed for cloud native environments. So what would be your suggestions or ideas on how we can overcome these challenges that we talked about previously in a more modern, agile development environment?
See, I tell you, we are talking about mindset, right? Let's take a step back in the sense that we are talking about mindset of a developer. You have given a beautiful example of Netflix, right? Netflix incorporated DevSecOps, not because developer told, because that was the business vision of Netflix. So before developers' mindset changes, it is the organizations who own the business, their mindset needs to be changed. They should understand, because Zscaler being a Gartner leader, we have a cloud solutions. A lot of times when we discuss with the organizations, right, the first thing comes is the discussion happens at a very executive level, right? One thing always comes in picture, the ROI, right? It starts from there. What is the ROI? Because these tools, what he mentioned is, these tools, there are multiple tools available. And if you are going for 360-degree holistic approach, it comes at a cost. The first thing comes at, why to invest in this? Instead of that, I can hire 10 security test engineers, great ones, and we can do it. So the ROI needs to come in picture. That, and ROI how comes in picture? ROI is a very hypothetical word. If any cyber attack happens, because take an example of SolarWinds. It could have been a very silly mistake of some developer. It was in the library code or something, but it cost.
They blamed it on intern, right?
Huh?
They blamed it on an intern.
They blamed it on internet. But it could be, it could be, millions and millions dollars of loss across the globe, right? It comes at a cost. That ROI has to be, vision needs to be taken into consideration. Once that is done, that is the first step, an important step. Because if my CEO, my CXOs are not ready to implement that, what a developer can do. Developer mindset can be changed by making him understand that you have to rework on your code 10 times before it goes live, right? Instead of that, if you have a DevSecOps, you can do that in one shot, because you are getting the live feeds where you are going wrong. What is the compliance issue? What is the issue, right? And you can fix that, right? Because as we discussed earlier, it's a very complex environment. You have microservices, you have APIs, workloads talking to workloads, applications talking to applications. It's not like user is just talking to application. That particular developer is using thousands of libraries, right? He has to understand where I'm going wrong. But that can only be achieved if the business vision of the organization is to have this kind of a setup in the system, right? That is also one of the important remedial step towards DevSecOps, because choosing the right solution, right platform, as mentioned by him, in the organization, considering the ROI in the long run is the first step. Once it's done, it becomes little easy to implement across the organization. That's my take on it.
Great, thanks. And Sridhar?
So I'll say about mindset change, both Bhupesh and Gagan have already covered, and Gagan has covered about tool set requirement and why those tools are required, right? And how do these help in DevSecOps. Right? So I'll just take a step back and cover three processes which are essential in DevSecOps, and how these three processes help to achieve overall, I'll say, the objective of resilient and I'll say secure applications, right? So the first one being the security requirements being enabled right from the design stage itself, right? When we are working on creating the stories and backlogs for agile development, right? So we have to have a security epic and security story along with the application story that will be going into the sprint. So for example, if I'm talking about I need to uh, create a API gateway, right? So that's my epic of this sprint. Now at the same time, there has to be a security story along with it that, okay, that API has to be TLS secured, right? It has to have an authentication and authorization mechanism in place. Right? So that's really important. Now, until unless you start uh, taking security to the leftmost pillar of the pipeline, you will not be able to achieve what do we call the entire objective of reducing uh, the gap of vulnerability remediation, right, in the pipeline. The second part is about the next phase that comes into the threat modeling. And believe me, guys, threat modeling is a fantastic tool to understand what are your attack surfaces of the potential application which is not yet built, but you want to build, right? So it allows you to understand what is my external attack surface area of the application, what would be its different components that would be in place, and what component might have a vulnerability in it, how that vulnerability can be exploited, right? So it allows you to think on those aspects and then accordingly put in security measures, right? And now the third aspect that I'll cover would be continuous monitoring. So we have talked a lot about developers, but what about operations, right? So until and unless we have a continuous monitoring in place, right, we'll not be able to see what went wrong, because it's not just about the code that can go wrong, it is the underlying infra that can fail as well. And the way we are talking about the Kubernetes architecture, the containers and all, right? So containers are ephemeral. So one container can die and another one needs to spin up. So infrastructure itself is a code now. So that's where the continuous monitoring comes into the picture, and then at the same time, the chaos engineering, the concept, wherein you instinctively and with the intent of making that your application components or your infra fails. Why? In order to test how resilient your application and your infrastructure architecture is. So that's the key part of overall DevSecOps when you look at the larger picture, not just about the pipeline, but in terms of overall application resilience.
Great. I think I like how you ended with chaos engineering, because that's one of the things where Netflix has adopted as one of the ways they test their own application, which is to just randomly go and shut off some component and then see if the application the code continues to function. And to reach that level of maturity assurance, where you build everything so modular that any one part fails, it doesn't lead to disruption. And that is not only at application, that also goes down to infrastructure, right? How to build that, and I think that was beautifully covered by all of you.
Sandeep, can I make a point here?
Sure, please.
Yeah, so Sridhar talks about operations specifically. I've been managing Cyber Fusion Center for a very long time now. And I have seen the connection between the security testing teams and the security operations team is much tighter now than it used to be earlier. So now there is a lot of focus. Let's suppose if there is an incident that happens, in our organization, we leverage security testing team too to work on that incident, to see what exactly happened, where we missed in the pipeline. Let's suppose if the threat actor went to the last stage of the cyber kill chain, then where did we miss? What was not tested? And if we tested, why it were not found? Right? So these kind of collaborations are really, really important, and it can also help you find those gaps in the overall implementation. And one last thing is, if you have a red team capability inside your organization, or even if you are leveraging external third-party service, you can use red team also to evaluate the effectiveness of the tools that you have implemented in your DevSecOps pipeline.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the addition. We have a few minutes left, so let me throw a bouncer at you guys, a fun one. Last couple of weeks, we've all heard about, maybe played with the Chat GPT from OpenAI. They do two things it does very, very well, right? You can throw your problem at it and it'll develop a code for you in whatever language you choose, whether it be Java, C, Python, Node.js, crazy, right? So going forward, will we need our human developers? And second thing what it does is, you give it your piece of code and it will tell you if there are any errors in it from security angle as well as from quality angle, etc. Right? Now, right now it's fairly new, it's a hobby, people are playing with it, understanding the limits of ChatGPT, how far it can go, both ethical and otherwise. So going forward, look into the crystal ball. We have few minutes left, so quickly please. Where do you see this headed? I mean, are we going to talk about DevSecOps for AIs in maybe a couple of years from now?
I think I can take this question because Zscaler has integration with this. And a lot of these tools who are doing this and you throw the idea, they create the code for. But there has to be some mechanism at the back end, right, which sanitize whether there is any problem or not, whether there is the loopholes, gaps or not, right? So obviously this is a growing idea, because as we started today's session with that, now developers and coders are everywhere, right? At helm of your time, you will find it. It's not expertise more, because you have readily libraries available, you have readily microservices available, as we all were discussing, infrastructure as a code, platform as a service, you have everything available. So developers are everywhere. They have their own ideas. Startups have their own ideas, and they implement the code using these solutions. So they need DevSecOps in their environment, because they are developing the code, but they are not so big to have all these solutions available, right, for security purposes. So DevSecOps kind of a thing will help them, speed up their coding process, delivery, and securely implementing. So yes, you're absolutely right. This is the new era, and we will be seeing these things more often now. And obviously, there are a lot of cybersecurity solutions available which integrate with these kind of front-end solutions.
So maybe vendors can develop AIs which write secure code from the beginning, right? That could be a solution.
Yes.
What do you think, Sridhar? What's the future going to be like?
Yeah. So, so first of all, I'm not a fortune teller, so who can speak about the future, right? But the way things are, specifically if we talk about open chat, right? And similar solution was, or you can say similar program, chat AI-based bot was introduced by Microsoft a couple of years back, and people could put in anything, and it will respond to it. And over a period of, I'll say, within 24 hours or 48 hours, they had to shut it down.
It was less than 24 hours, by the way.
Right? It was less than 24 hours, right? And reason being the bias that that gets introduced to the AI systems, because it learns from what you feed into it, right? Of course, Open ChatGPT is far more advanced AI platform wherein two AI engines are running, right? One produces an output and the other checks it and produces the counter, you can say, output to it. So that we'll see a lot more maturity into the AI platforms, of course, but will it eliminate the need of developers? I don't think so. You will always need somebody to understand your requirement and then deliver the output the way you want, right? So the similar aspect was there with low code platforms or no code platforms, right? So we said, okay, with no code platforms and low code platforms, we don't need developers, we don't need secure kind of securities inbuilt. But what happened? Still, we need the sanitized inputs, the outputs needs to be secured, and then we need to ensure with the citizen developer kind of a program, we still need somebody to guide them what needs to be developed. Right? So that's my
Thanks,
take on it.
Vish.
So I think there are so many things today that a few years back was not a possibility, and when we look at today, it's happening in front of us. With this technology, I think definitely there will be a change in the way we write code. There will be more machine writing code for us, but I don't think, even in my opinion, there will ever be elimination of developers not writing code, because the business dynamics are changing so fast and so aggressively that you need reasoning, critical thinking, everything being a developer and matching those requirements. So I'm sure that developer will be using this technology for their benefit, but complete elimination of developer, no, maybe, but yes, this will be effective use whenever we don't have to, like, we use libraries, right? Similarly, if we can have machine write the code for us, why we want to write it?
Oh, absolutely. I
Because
like it
one
how
more,
developers can use it to improve themselves.
exactly.
Sorry, you have a point, Gagan.
Because even these AI ML, solutions also use libraries at the back. They can't write from scratch. They are just refining your logic, right? So to write those libraries, you need developer, right? The only
Absolutely.
thing is, it will ease out a little bit of scratch work for the developer, so they can refine their and fine tune their code
I
once
also
it is
feel
done.
humans will be needed to define those boundaries for these AIs, right? Otherwise, I mean, we are in Terminator movie.
And I'm sure it is going to open up the another threat vector for us, like using a lot of open source libraries and then another log4j type of situation.
Great.
So just to add one last point here, so the developer's role would change in such cases, and there'll be new stream or new risk vectors that will be falling into the ethical AI space. So that's something that we'll be seeing soon.
Great, thanks. So thanks for all the insights and discussions. I really enjoyed it, had fun, a lot of new things to learn. I took notes. So how about a big round of applause for the panelists?
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
We are all
you so
outside
much.
in case you want to meet up, chat up later.